Yes, it's this Robert Nielsen character again. I know, he posts a lot of really atrocious stuff. It's one of those cases where if I tried to debunk everything he said, I wouldn't have time to do anything else, so I generally don't bother. But a lot of you asked me to do this one. No one has time for a completely free market. So okay, let's take a look. The free market often sounds quite simple and straightforward. Consumers simply decide whether product A or B benefits them more and then choose accordingly. If the same or similar product is sold by shop A or B, consumers simply choose whichever is cheaper, better quality, or otherwise benefits them. It is easy and doesn't require any complicated plan or someone telling consumers what is best for them. People simply decide themselves. This is the market as described by economists, politicians, and writers, especially when they're trying to make a political point. Yeah, gotta love the poisoning the well there. Like he's not doing that. After all, if the market is so simple and straightforward, why do we need the government interfering? All these rules and regulations only get in the way. Surely it is better for everyone if we just leave the consumers to decide for themselves. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, and although this sounds like a completely reasonable idea, it is completely unworkable in reality. As tempting as it is to simply remove regulations and let people figure it out for themselves, the free market is not simple and straightforward. It is an extremely complex mechanism that none of us fully understand. The biggest reason we shouldn't remove regulations is because simply do not have the time. Well, if it's that complex and none of us fully understand it, how is government going to regulate it? Let me use an example. I once went to the shops to buy some bacon. In my economics classes, this was always presented as a simple affair. I would just compare two types of bacon, see which was better in terms of price or quality, and choose whichever gave me the most utility. However, when I came to the aisle, to my surprise, I saw that there were 40 different types of bacon. There were different sizes, different brands, different parts of the pig, etc. How was I supposed to know which was best? Perhaps I could give each one a taste test and rate them accordingly and devise a system that combines taste and price to calculate the most efficient option, but I would have to cook each piece individually with similar food in order to give a fair test and perform it more than once to avoid the risk of getting an unusually good or bad piece. Needless to say, this would be an enormously time-consuming task that would take weeks, by which time Need Bacon products would probably be released and no one has the time for. Geez, Nielsen, calm down. It's only bacon. It's not the end of the world. I wonder why it's so important to him that he has absolutely the best bacon, as opposed to something that just does the job for him. This is the kind of attitude I see from spoiled rich brats who are raised getting everything they want. The rest of us realize that life is made of compromises, and we can't always get everything we want or feel or deserve. As he points out, it would take time to evaluate each and every one. That time is a cost. Just as you wouldn't buy the same pack of bacon for $20 that you would if it only cost $4, you're only going to put enough time into evaluating the different types and brands as you feel is worth the effort. But as those of us who live in this little place I like to call reality know, this isn't the only option. You can try one brand of bacon one week, then switch to another to see if you like it better. You're acting as if every time you go to the store, there's a whole new 40 brands and you have to start all over. And at some point, the bacon you land on might be so good that you can just be satisfied with that and not even worry about putting the costs into gaining a marginal improvement with some other brand. And besides, what's his alternative? Government mandating bacon? Which bacon is the best is largely subjective. Some people like thin slices, others like them thicker. Some people like a lot of fat, others not so much. Some might like theirs smoked. Some might be concerned about the sodium content. Some might like pancetta, others might like Canadian bacon. Some people might like turkey bacon or a vegan bacon substitute. How is government supposed to regulate one style of bacon that is best? The only thing they could possibly do to make your decision easier is to remove your choices. But how is that a benefit? Now, watch him completely destroy his own argument. So what do people do instead? Sometimes they just choose randomly. As an economics student, it always struck me as odd that I would spend all day learning complex equations that supposedly related as to how consumers made their decisions and then randomly choose what to eat for dinner. Most times, people just buy the same product they did before, or they'll choose one with a nice packaging or that they recently saw an ad for. I usually buy the cheapest. See, you do have the time to make the evaluation that matters to you. price. If you thought there was a good chance that a more expensive type of bacon would be sufficiently better, in your subjective opinion, enough to be worth not only the extra money, but also the time you put into comparing different brands, you do that. But you don't, which means that you don't feel that it's worth the effort, which means you have made the decision that's right for you. And it wasn't even that difficult. Although this might seem a bit obvious or even trivial, it has serious consequences. The core principle of the free market is that the invisible hand guides it to the most efficient outcome. It is assumed that consumers know what is best for themselves and act accordingly. Consumers buy the goods that benefit themselves the most, thereby rewarding the businesses that are most efficient and innovative. Consumers are supposed to avoid the inferior products, thereby punishing less efficient businesses, forcing them to improve or go bankrupt. Prices adjust and respond to consumer actions and thereby guide the economy to the most efficient use of resources. However, if it is impossible for consumers to choose which is the best, then the system doesn't work. Businesses that make shoddy goods can continue in business, while innovative and efficient businesses can fail to succeed. Did you spot the fallacy? He thinks the concepts like efficiency or benefit or inferior or shoddy are intrinsic to the item itself, as opposed to being the subjective evaluation of the individual consuming the item. Consumers are all unique individuals with their own individual tastes and opinions. They like different kinds of bacon, which is why all these different kinds stay on the market. But if the goods are shoddy, why would people buy them a second time? Again, this comes down to time in our brain. Honestly, a lot of the time, I don't remember what I bought last time or its quality. People don't have the time or the patience to stand in the aisle, conjure up a list of all previous times they bought each brand, and compare which satisfied them the most. The fact is that I've repeatedly made mistakes and not learned from them. Even if a product wasn't good, that doesn't mean the others are. That might be the case with you, but most of us aren't the idiot you so clearly are. We do remember what we've bought. We do try different things. We do know if we like Captain Crunch or Fruit Loops better, and we know if there's something we prefer about the brand itself as opposed to the cheaper imitation that comes in the bag. Personally, I like the bags, and I generally like the store brands on a lot of stuff. But on other things like sausage, I prefer brands like Jimmy Dean because the cheaper brands seem to result in smaller patties that aren't as savory. Do I know that with absolute certainty? No, but I've tried enough of the cheaper ones to consider any others to have a low prior probability, low enough that it's not worth my time to try them out. I might be missing out on better and cheaper sausage, but it's just not that big an issue in my life. And by the way, here's a nice little life hack. You don't have to stand in the aisle and conjure up all the times you bought something before. You can do this before you go to the store. You can make a list of things you're going to buy. What would we call that? We should come up with a name for that. A list of groceries that you're going to buy at the store. What would we call that? Hey, I've got it. A grocery list! Idiot. The worst part is that all these problems exist under the current system of regulation. Imagine if instead we removed the regulations and added even more calculations that must be made. You know, I'll never understand what it is with lefties that they think that giving someone another option is a bad thing. It must just be the authoritarian mindset. There must be one way that's best, and we need government to limit everything else. But since that's actually a subjective evaluation, he's imagining it coming out the way he likes. That's the thing about authoritarians. They consider their subjective opinion to be the one true objective fact. We've seen it before, not only with Nielsen but with so many others as well, but in all probability, the politician or bureaucrat who ends up making the decision isn't going to care what Nielsen thinks. He's going to have his own idea of what's best, and it may not agree with Nielsen's evaluation. This is the point authoritarians never seem to want to consider. So instead of the current system, where there is some assurance that the workers who made your products had somewhat decent wages and working conditions, although globalization is undermining this, minimum wages and labor laws were abolished. Here's another example of what I just said. Somehow giving someone an option is a bad thing. And before you come back with, oh, but he's thinking about the workers, not the consumers, well, so am I. Think about it. Let's say someone comes along and says to you, he'll pay you 5 cents to mow his lawn. Lefties like Nielsen will come along whining about how that's a horrible thing to do and we need a minimum wage to take that option away. But think about it. How were you harmed by me making the offer? You don't have to take it, and you're probably not going to. So I'll have to offer you more money to do it. But even if I decide not to and decide to mow my own lawn anyway, in what way are you hurt by having the option? I've always thought that lefties like Nielsen have a very low view of workers, like they're helpless kindergartners who need mommy government to come along and hold their hand so the bad people don't abuse them. That probably explains why they don't actually have that much support among the working class. If you treat people like they're helpless children, as opposed to intelligent adults capable of making their own decisions, they might just decide they don't want to support you. Or consider environmental laws. Well, we already have. Both carbon levels and particulates are inversely correlated with economic freedom. The more economic freedom, the better the environment. I don't think we have to rehash this. Some people say we should remove anti-discrimination laws and simply let consumers decide if they want to buy from racists. After all, who would buy from an openly racist shop? However, it can be very difficult to get information about the inner workings of a business, such as how they pay their workers and the ethnic, gender, religion breakdown, etc. Well, yes, that's true, but it's true because of anti-discrimination laws. I mean, you're talking about an openly racist shop. You use that phrase yourself. So we already know that. If a cafe owner isn't legally allowed to put up that whites only sign, how are you going to know that he's racist? Your magic government paper doesn't stop him from being racist. It only makes it not be obvious, and so it's more difficult for the market to punish him. So without regulations, the already complicated decision of picking which bacon to buy becomes exponentially more difficult. Now I have to compare the 40 or so brands based on their relative price, taste, quality, risk of disease, treatment of animals, environmental impact, blah, 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 blah. Oh, will you quit your whining, you spoiled infant? In what way would this be any better if you only had one or two choices? If there were only one supplier of bacon, they could do whatever they want in regards to these areas you find important, and so you wouldn't have any power over them as a consumer. I mean, what were the people of Flint supposed to do when the Democratic government screwed up their one and only water supply, something that they had prohibited the free market from competing with? And before you say, oh, you can just vote, answer me this. If people don't have time to research all these options, how are they going to have time to research all of these same options and the candidate who's claiming to know the best ones? You're just adding to the information you need to get, while at the same time diminishing your choice, since you'd have to choose among a raft of different options all at once, and you could only do it once every 2 or 4 years. This is why regulation is actually helpful to consumers and simplifies life. You really sound like you're longing for the days when your mommy made these decisions for you. Well, if that's the case, then you can find someone to tell you what kind of bacon to consume, what kind of car to drive, and which products are nicest to the dolphins. And you can have them take 50% of your paycheck and threaten you with guns and beat you and lock you up if you decide to do something different. And also let them raid your house and shoot your dog if it turns out you have a kind of plant they don't like. But make that decision for yourself. You don't get to make that decision for everybody else. The rest of us can take the time ourselves, or, something you didn't mention, we can turn to a group that's actually reputable. UL, Consumer Reports, or Good Housekeeping, or read reviews on Yelp or Amazon. I mean, for crying out loud, the whitehouse.gov website is verified by a certificate from DigiCert. Not even the government trusts the government with these things. And it's not just a matter of trust. Things only survive if consumers believe in them enough to give up their own money. With government services, there is no choice. The system, whatever it is supported at the point of a gun, with consumers having no say in the matter at all. So thanks for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe, and share this video everywhere to help make up for YouTube shadow banning. Also, YouTube tends to demonetize videos like this, so if you don't see an ad, how about making a small contribution? You can do so at donate.bogosity.tv using PayPal or crypto, or becoming a regular supporter at Patreon or Subscribestar, or watch my videos on bittube.tv, which is always monetized and never censored. Until next time, stay strong and be free.